Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Battle Through the Heavens based on novel. So let's start. Next, I will have to make a trip to the inner academy. I shall leave the matter of gathering helpers to you. Xiao Yan smiled and said, "No problem. Leave it to me." Xiao Li parted his mouth and smiled. His gaze turned toward the distant southern sky outside. A savage arc faintly surfaced on his cold, stern face. Misty Cloud Sect, the person seeking revenge is about to come. Are you prepared? The person who had followed Xiao Yang into the inner academy was still Medusa, who had been following closely beside Xiao Yang. These two people were standing on the main road where people came and went without any misgivings. Naturally, they attracted a countless number of surprised and curious gazes. With Medusa's beautiful, demon-like appearance, she naturally possessed an unusual allure that was difficult to describe with words to these young students, who had been living in the ivory tower. Some of the younger teenagers, or young men, felt a great interest to the mature woman. This was the so-called fondness for an elder sister feeling. Medusa appeared to have totally ignored all the numerous amazed gazes from around her. Her bewitching, pretty face was still as cold as ice. The cold aura spreading all over her body that completely turned others away also caused some of the bold fellows, who had the thought of striking up a conversation with her, to dismiss such a notion. Although Medusa was able to ignore those gazes from around her, Xiao Yang still felt somewhat helpless. Since the former had been following him around closely, those gazes could not help but fall onto him. However, the gazes that turned to him were naturally not of amazement, but of extremely pure envy and a kind of jealousy within a man's heart. A person who was able to possess that kind of beauty, who could bring ruin to a country, was mostly a common enemy in the hearts of men. Xiao Yang naturally did not hear the various conversations of those students. After leaving the spot where everything occurred, he maneuvered at lightning-like speed to the area deep inside the inner academy where the first elder Su Qian was located. When Xiao Yang entered the study that Su Qian usually used, the latter also discovered his footsteps. He lifted his head to look at Xiao Yang, who was the first to enter, and could not help but smile. He was just about to get up when his gaze locked onto Medusa, who was behind Xiao Yang. "First elder need not be worried. I have already settled the matter between the both of us." Xiao Yang saw the suddenly solidifying of Su Qian's face, and hurriedly opened his mouth to laugh. He knew that Su Qian was extremely afraid of Medusa within his heart. After all, this woman truly caused him to feel a sense of danger. Su Qian's tensed body only quietly relaxed a little after hearing this. Although most of his focus still remained on Medusa, he was able to reveal a smile on his face as he spoke. "You have been gone for a couple of months in one go. Were it not because I had confidence in you, I would have really thought that you had been quietly finished off by those fellows within the Black Corner region." Xiao Yang smiled and slowly walked into the study. After which, he sat down on the chair in front of Su Qian and spoke with a smile. "First elder need not lie to me. How can the inner academy not sense it when I create such a big commotion within the Black Corner region?" Su Qian was startled. He immediately could not help but laugh as he shook his head. He said, "Little fellow, you are indeed not an ordinary person. You have now occupied Feng City, set up an enormous medicinal pill auction, and attracted the attention of over half the Black Corner region. The inner academy naturally needed to pay some attention. What are your plans now that you have returned? However, strictly speaking, you are still a student of our inner academy. Looking at the date, you have yet to graduate. Yet, you have not been training within the inner academy. This kind of behavior is sufficient to allow me to give you the title of a bad student." Su Qian first asked a question, before immediately rolling his eyes at Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang gave an embarrassed smile. He was also somewhat helpless as he spoke with a bitter smile. "First elder should also know that the inner academy no longer has much benefit to me anymore." Su Qian curled his mouth. Xiao Yang's current strength would not be able to increase much within the inner academy. Even training all day long at the bottom of the blazing sky Qi refining tower would not have much attraction to Xiao Yang, who possessed the real fallen heart flame. However, he still felt a little displeased when he thought about it. This fellow really did not engage in honest work. "First elder, I might perhaps return to the Jioma Empire within these 2 months. Xiao Yang's gaze looked at Su Qian, as he spoke with an increasingly solemn expression. Su Qian was slightly startled. He knit his brow slightly as he voiced his thoughts. Are you returning to the Jioma Empire already? So soon? Xiao Yang sighed softly and spoke with a faint voice. I have already left for 3 years. Some grudges must eventually be settled. Su Qian smiled and said, You are about to leave. Is there anything that I can help you with? Xiao Yang rubbed his head and spoke with an embarrassed smile. There is actually nothing much. It is just that I hope First Elder can help me look after Xiao Gate after I leave. This is not a bad development place. Once I settle the matter in the Jioma Empire, I will formally send someone to take it over. However, before this, First Elder might need to help look after it. After all, you should also know about the kind of place the Black Corner region is. Without me sitting around, it is likely that Feng City will be occupied by other factions within a short period of time. Little fellow, you actually want me, a person from the Inner Academy, to help you look after a faction within the Black Corner region. Su Qian felt neither able to laugh nor cry. However, he ended up nodding a moment later. He voiced his thoughts, this is not too much trouble. The Black Corner region has many big and small factions, who could form a force that even the Jiunan Academy would have difficulty contending against if they united together. But it is fortunate that each of these fellows harbor sinister motives and have difficulty joining hands. Given our strength, taking care of Xiao Gate should not be much of a problem. In that case, thank you very much, First Elder. Xiao Yang rejoiced when he saw Su Qian nodding his head, and he cupped his hands together to thank with a grin. Su Qian smiled and immediately said, Although I know that returning to the Jioma Empire is an extremely important matter to you, you should not blame me for not providing you much help on this matter, because of the special status of the Jiunan Academy on the continent. Xiao Yang is not an unreasonable person. First Elder has already given me enough help. Xiao Yang laughed softly. He had naturally not dreamed that Su Qian would use the Jiunan Academy's strength to help him seek revenge. After all, this academy did not belong to him alone. Su Qian smiled and nodded as he looked at the cheerful smile on the delicate, handsome, young face. His finger gently knocked on the table. A moment later, he randomly said, Of course, some elders, especially those like Lin Yang who have been promoted from a student, may be an Inner Academy elder in name, but they are free individuals. Whatever they wish to do naturally does not have much relationship with us. This do you understand? Xiao Yang was startled when he heard these words of Su Qian, which were pointing in a certain direction. He immediately smiled and nodded. Since that is the case, thank you very much, First Elder. Xiao Yang sent off those elders who had greeted him before he quietly sighed in relief. It had only been a couple of months since they had met. Did they really need to be so warm and enthusiastic? Where do you need to go next? An ice-cold voice containing some impatience sounded from behind Xiao Yang. It was actually Medusa, who had waited for over half a day. I thought that you wanted to continue being a mute. Xiao Yang turned around and studied Medusa's vertical eyebrows on her pretty face, while he spoke with a smile. Medusa once again displayed a taut face in the face of Xiao Yang's teasing. The latter could only helplessly shake his head at this. He said, Let's go. We will make a trip to Pan's Gate first. I don't know when the next time I will return after making this trip to the Jioma Empire. Therefore, it is best that I settle everything properly. Xiao Yang raised his feet and took the lead to walk outside after he spoke. Medusa was just like a ghost as she closely followed. Xiao Yang's return to Pan's Gate naturally caused Pan's Gate to immediately boil. A countless number of people swarmed over from all directions. Their purpose was to give a reverent cheer to this mysterious leader whom they could hardly see. Xiao Yang's current reputation within the Inner Academy had already reached a certain level. There was no student from any previous batch who could reach such a level. Wu Hao, Hu Jiao, Lin Yang, Xiao Yu, and other important people in the upper echelons of the Pan's Gate once again gathered within the meeting room of Pan's Gate because of Xiao Yang's return. You created such a big commotion the moment you returned. There is currently an unknown number of brothers from Pan's Gate waiting outside for you to reveal yourself. Xiao Yu shook her head as she glanced at Xiao Yang, who was seated in the leader's seat. after hearing the noise float in from outside the hall. You have disappeared for a couple of months again this time around. What do you want to do now that you are back? Lin Yang made a big motion, as he sat on his chair and rolled his eyes toward Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang was silent. He immediately spoke in a slow manner, "Everyone, this time around, I have returned to tell all of you that I may perhaps be leaving the Jiunan Academy and returning to the Jiuma Empire within these 2 months." The original joyous atmosphere within the hall immediately became still after Xiao Yang spoke. Everyone looked at one another. They also knew a little about Xiao Yang's past. Hence, they naturally knew what he intended to do when they heard him saying that he was returning to the Jiuma Empire. Therefore, no one opened their mouths to hold him back. Hu Jia was finally the first to speak after remaining quiet for a long while. "So soon?" Xiao Yang bitterly laughed as he faced everyone who had suddenly become much quieter. He sighed, "That's right, I have already prepared everything. The Xiao clan is still waiting for me to return. I cannot delay any longer." Everyone was silent. A moment later, numerous voices that appeared as though they had come to a prior agreement appeared. "I will leave with you." Xiao Yang was stunned. He looked at everyone who was looking at each other and felt his heart become warm. He smiled and said, "I also hope so. However, it is too risky returning to the Jiuma Empire this time around. The strength of the Misty Cloud sect might not be any weaker than the lineup of the strong people that Han Feng had gathered to launch a sneak attack on the academy 2 years ago. Moreover, what will happen to Pan's Gate if all of you leave? This is our blood and sweat." Wu Hao and Hu Jiu immediately became dispirited when they heard this. "I have agreed with you back then, right?" Lin Yang spread his hands and smiled at Xiao Yang. "There is no longer much use for me to remain in the inner academy now. It might be better for me to leave and strike out with you." Xiao Yang also hesitated for a moment when he saw Lin Yang's smiling face. He nodded his head and spoke, "I shall not say any arrogant words. I am reassured with your strength. Moreover, there is not much use for you to remain in Pan's Gate. It is fine if you follow me." Lin Yang's face could not resist twitching when he heard Xiao Yang's words. What did he mean by there was not much use for him to remain in Pan's Gate? Was this fellow's words not too damaging? Wu Hao and Hu Jiu frowned as they thought deeply. They naturally knew that these factions within the academy did not have the strictness of the sects and gangs in the outside world. No matter how one put it, they were still students. It was not possible to put in place traitor rules for the sect etc. This action of Xiao Yang was to turn Pan's Gate into a talent reservoir for Xiao Gate. Being a faction of the Black Corner region, the various rules within Xiao Gate were definitely very strict. The overall mobilization ability of this kind of faction would naturally exceed Pan's Gate by 10, or even 100 times. It was not bad if they were currently able to make plans for the future when they had to leave the Jiunan Academy. If you are worried, the two of you can temporarily manage the Xiao Gate, which lacks someone to manage it during this period that I am away. This way, the both of you will be better able to completely understand the implication of this." Xiao Yang smiled as he suggested. "You are the true leader of Pan's Gate. You have the right to make such decisions. Since you possess such a thinking, we will obey you." Wu Hao and Hu Jiu smiled. They mused for a moment before they nodded and spoke. "Pan's Gate would have scattered were it not because of you guys. What has it got to do with me?" Xiao Yang sighed. "The two of you need not flatter each other. Let's do as Xiao Yang says with regards to this matter. Wu Hao and my strength are too weak, and we would likely not be of much help if we were to follow you to the Jiuma Empire. Therefore, we will stay behind to manage Pan's Gate and try to understand Xiao Gate. We will come and help you when we break through to the Do Wang class." Hu Jiu rolled her eyes and immediately agreed. Xiao Yang smiled and nodded. He also slowly sighed in relief within his heart. The most important thing was that Pan's Gate had been settled properly. Lin Yang came and found him with a face full of sly smiles during one of the days while Xiao Yang was waiting idly. After which, the former dragged him out of Pan's Gate and brought him to the ever-noisy fighting arena of the Inner Academy. The Inner Academy's fighting arena was the most popular place within the entire Inner Academy. There were a countless number of people who wipe off their perspiration in this place. The victor would enjoy the cheers, honor, or ranking, while the loser could only withdraw in hopeless dejection, before holding their anger into train, anticipating the day that they could get back at their opponent. Two human figures suddenly rushed out, before flashing and appearing in the fighting arena below. Xiao Yan's gaze drifted over. He was stunned to realize that the two people below were surprisingly Lin Xiuya and Liu Qing. These two fellows? Xiao Yan asked in a stunned manner, while observing Lin Xiuya and Liu Qing's eager gazes, as they raised their heads below. I know that you should require quite a number of helpers when you return to the Jioma Empire this time around. Hence, I have told these two fellows about your issue. Of course, I did not reveal any intention of inviting them. However, these two fellows volunteered by saying that they will also follow you to the Jioma Empire to experience the so-called Misty Cloud sect if you could defeat the two of them. Lin Yang shrugged his shoulders and spoke with a smile. Xiao Yang was startled. He immediately looked down at the two people with some surprise. It was quite normal for Lin Yang to follow him to the Jioma Empire. After all, the latter had already mentioned it back then. However, these two fellows actually also. Most of the old friends who were here back then have already left the inner academy. There is no longer much meaning to continue remaining here now. Actually, that group of fellows back then did admire you quite a bit. These two people may usually act very proud, but they also possess the same thoughts toward you. From a certain point of view, they also think of you as someone they can befriend. Lin Yang smiled and explained. If you also think that these two fellows are worth befriending, you should agree to their request. Moreover, you should not hold anything back and viciously give them a beating. That's right, Xiao Yang, beat these two fellows. These two people maintained the highest percentage of victory within the fighting arena. You are about to leave soon. Leave behind a mark that others will have difficulty exceeding. A young person should do some crazy things. A laugh suddenly sounded from behind. Xiao Yang turned around and saw that it was actually Wu Hao, Xiao Yu, and a large group of people. From the looks of their expressions, it seemed that they were already aware of this long before. Xiao Yang looked at the somewhat serious expression of Lin Yang, and then the encouraging faces of Wu Hao and the others. He was dumbfounded. A moment later, he smiled and nodded before saying, since this is the case, I shall viciously flatten these two fellows. Actually, I had the desire to do this back then. However, I didn't have the ability. Xiao Yang's toes pressed on the ground after saying this. His body flipped over the guardrail and rushed down like a shadow, appearing in the arena in an instant. Xiao Yang parted his mouth and smiled as he looked at the somewhat excited faces of the two of them. He clenched his fist, and the sound of beans cracking began to appear. Xiao Yang smiled. He immediately extended a hand sign toward the two of them and laughed, 10 exchanges. If I am unable to dispatch the both of you in 10 exchanges, it can be considered my loss. How arrogant. Even the first elder is present in this fight. Don't end up biting your tongue. Lin Xiuya pointed at a certain part of the viewing gallery as he chuckled. Xiao Yang's gaze followed the direction that Lin Xiuya was pointing at and looked over. He did indeed see Su Qian and the inner academy's elders sitting and waiting at that place. They smiled while looking at the arena below. You fellows, are you all so free? Xiao Yang helplessly shook his head and turned around to look at the two people. He spoke with a grin, however it is still 10 moves. Lin Xiuya and Liu Qing raised their brows when they heard these words. They immediately laughed. Powerful dou qi suddenly surged out from their bodies. Each of them took one step to the side. Although this seemed like a random step, it caused surprise to flash across Xiao Yang's eyes. With this standing position, these two fellows could simultaneously deal with attacks that the opponent unleashed from any angle. When had the cooperation between these two reached such a great degree? No wonder they dare be this arrogant. They have some cards up their sleeves. Xiao Yang smiled and shook his head. Dark green dou qi seeped from every part of his body. After which, it galloped through his qi paths in a torrent-like manner. A powerful energy feeling filled every cell under Xiao Yang's skin. The cheers of the people in the surrounding viewing gallery became much louder as they experienced the three powerful auras that suddenly surged out. Many people's faces were flushed from the excitement of witnessing a fierce competition. Are you ready? Xiao Yang faced the other two and softly asked. Lin Xiuya and Liu Qing used their actions to reply to Xiao Yang's question. The two figures shook and turned into two vague outlines, which could not be separated. Finally, they turned into a somewhat mysterious arc as they rushed toward Xiao Yang, quite a good speed. Xiao Yang smiled as he glanced at the two blurry figures that had rushed over. His body did not move. An instant later, two winds suddenly reached him. The sharp force carried an air-tearing, ear-piercing sound. One came from above and the other below as they attacked Xiao Yang. Lin Xiuya's and Liu Qing's attacking position was somewhat tricky. With one above and one below, they were attacking two spots, which Xiao Yang would have difficulty managing. If Xiao Yang only defended against one location, he would definitely be struck from the other spot. The first exchange. Bang! A low, deep muffled sound appeared in the arena. A powerful force vented out in a torrent-like manner at that moment, causing Lin Xiuya's and Liu Qing's figure to explosively withdraw by over 10 steps. They each left behind deep footprints each time their feet touched the ground. This fellow, what frightening speed and strength! Liu Qing stabilized his body as a thought flashed across his heart. The pores all over his body suddenly shrank. Immediately, a black line abruptly flashed in his eyes as though it had shuttled through the gap in space. Liu Qing's reaction was similarly quick when the black shadow surfaced. His feet stepped forward and his tall, strong figure swiftly withdrew. The second exchange. Do Qi surged out from Liu Qing's body and eliminated the chest tightness that was caused by the suction and convulsing force. He turned his head and took a glance at the boundary line, only 2 to 3 meters behind him. Some cold sweat involuntarily surfaced on his forehead. He was nearly thrown out of the boundary line. Now is not the time to rejoice. A slight laugh was suddenly transmitted over just as Liu Qing sighed in relief. A faint thunder-like roar sounded and the black figure appeared in front of Liu Qing in a manner that once again caused everyone to be stunned. Great rift coffin splitting claw. Liu Qing's expression sank upon seeing that Xiao Yang was about to approach him. His hand that was brewing Do Qi was suddenly extended out. Do Qi wrapped around his hand and dyed it into something like a metal hand claw. It carried an air fluctuation as it violently clawed at Xiao Yang's chest. The third exchange. Piercing pain was faintly transmitted from Liu Qing's hand as he was continuously attacked by the air that Xiao Yang flicked over. However, he did not show any intentions of withdrawing his palm and pulling back. He carried a fierce aura and instantly pounced to the side of Xiao Yang's hand. His claws suddenly changed its stance as he extended and firmly grabbed both of Xiao Yang's hands. Do it! Liu Qing suddenly let out a low roar after grabbing both of Xiao Yang's hands. This fellow actually practiced the 3000 lightning movement to such an extent Su Qian was surprised as he watched the strange scene below. He could not help but softly mutter under his breath. Liu Xiuya's and Liu Qing's expressions changed drastically the instant that the former's hand passed through Xiao Yang's body. Liu Qing was the person who found it most incredulous. This was because he had clearly sensed that Xiao Yang was indeed firmly restrained by him an instant earlier. However, Xiao Yang had strangely disappeared an instant later. This should be the fifth exchange, right? A somewhat icy hand had unknowingly and quietly pressed on their chest and back, while the expression of the two were undergoing a drastic change. The faint iciness emitted caused all of the pores on the bodies of the two people to suddenly open wide. If a force was emitted in this position, it was likely that Liu Qing and Lin Xiuya would at least be seriously injured even if they did not die. Lin Xiuya's and Liu Qing's body instantly stiffened as their fatal points were restrained. Perspiration flowed wildly from their foreheads. That fellow's speed had already reached such a frightening level. A gentle force suddenly erupted and shook Lin Xiuya and Liu Qing out of the arena. After which, their bodies miserably rolled a couple of times before stabilizing. Is it over? The viewing gallery was completely silent. Only Xiao Yang's soft laughter sounded. Many people were unable to see what actually occurred in this battle. However, the unusual speed of Xiao Yang where he strangely appeared and disappeared in a flicker caused everyone to quietly feel shock. The silence continued for a long time, before it was eventually broken by an applause. Following which, a thunder-like applause which could move mountains and overturn the seas resounded like a bang. Lin Shuya and Liu Qing climbed up from the ground. They exchanged looks with each other, smiled bitterly, and shook their heads. The gap was too huge. There was basically not the slightest chance of comparison. They did not have the slight possibility of winning in front of such frightening speed. This fellow is really too terrifying. Back then, I was still able to go all out until both of us were defeated with serious injuries. Now, Liu Qing laughed bitterly. No wonder even an outstanding girl like Sun likes him from the looks of it now. He does indeed have the qualification. Lin Shuya sighed softly in his heart as he studied the young man on the stage who was displaying a warm smile. This battle, not surprisingly, became a topic that the people in the inner academy relished. The fight in the fighting arena that caused a countless number of people to be shocked ended in Xiao Yan's perfect victory. Lin Shuyan and Liu Qing were people whose names reverberated like thunder even among the new students within the inner academy. They were frightening existences who had dominated the top 3 on the strong ranking. No one could replace them all the way until they detached from their student identities and became inner academy elders. Hence, compared to them, Xiao Yang, who had been missing for 2 years, gave people a somewhat unrealistic feeling because of the rich legendary aura that had covered his name due to the influence of public opinion. Although when Xiao Yang left the tower, he had fought with Lin Shuya, at that time, it was merely a test, and although some strong experts could see the differences in strength between the two, normal students didn't have the perception to see who was stronger in the quick exchange. As for the huge attack against the Black Alliance, although he had slain Han Feng who was at the Do Huang stage, the act of him doing so was too shocking that it made people feel that it was unreal. Especially for people who didn't witness it firsthand. Although many people didn't express their dissenting feelings out loud, that thought remained in their hearts. Xiao Mei. The familiar face caused Xiao Yang to be startled as he immediately cried out with a smile. Xiao Yang Gege. The young lady was wearing a pale purple dress. Her lovely body curved in all the right places. Certain aspects of her young self possessed a graceful demeanor comparable to a matured woman. This was especially the case for her little face that was a mixture of enchantment and purity. It was able to emit a kind of unusual charm. It was likely that this kind of outstanding young lady possessed quite a number of suitors within the inner academy. Episode 50 Part 1 end here.